Hello, hello, everyone. Thank you for tuning in to the Pink Cloud Frequency. I am your host, Brianna Wynn. Today, we are going to discuss boredom. The thought of quitting drinking can feel overwhelming because the next thought that usually enters is what you'll do on a Friday night, what you'll do on vacation, what you'll do when you have nothing else planned. Boredom is not only one of the most common reasons women drink, it's one of the most common reasons women seek out any type of distraction. But what if alcohol was never curing boredom in the first place? What if it's just distracting you from it? And what if the feeling you've been calling boredom isn't actually boredom at all? What if it's disconnection? What if it's restlessness? What if it's dissatisfaction? What if it's your intuition trying to get your attention? Today, I want to explore the possibility that boredom isn't the problem, because boredom may actually be pointing towards something much deeper. Many women listening to this podcast have full lives. You have careers, you have children, you have a partner, you have homes to manage, you have schedules that are packed from morning until night. You're busy, you're productive, you're responsible, and you're constantly moving. And yet, despite all of that activity, you may still find yourself feeling bored because boredom isn't the absence of things to do. You have plenty to do. You wish you had more free time. When that free time finally arrives, it can feel surprisingly uncomfortable. Why? Because when you're constantly moving, you don't have time to examine how you feel. The next task is waiting, the next email, the next practice, the next appointment. Movement creates distraction, and distraction can feel productive. But the moment life slows down, all of the thoughts you've been out running suddenly catch up to you. Questions about your relationships, questions about your happiness, questions about your future, questions about whether or not you're living in alignment with who you want to be. Those questions create awareness, and awareness is often what you're trying to avoid, which is why I think as a society, we've misunderstood boredom altogether. Because when most people say they're bored, what they're really saying is that something feels missing, something feels disconnected, something isn't fully engaging them. And that's very different than simply having nothing to do, because you can be busy all day and still feel bored. You can watch television all evening and still feel bored. You can spend an entire day running errands and still feel bored. You can be at work and still feel bored. So boredom is not the absence of activity. Boredom is the absence of meaningful engagement. It's the absence of connection to yourself, to your life, to your environment, and to your world. And when you experience that vacantness, you will often try to fill it with stimulation, whether that's scrolling, shopping, food, entertainment, noise, constant busyness, or alcohol. Anything that prevents you from sitting with yourself. And I know because I used to do the same thing. I was never actually bored. I was uncomfortable. Most people don't sit with themselves long enough to know the difference. I was actually painfully aware of that void. But even so, I still wouldn't give myself the space to process those feelings. Every feeling carries with it information. But when you drink, the feeling disappears, as does the opportunity to dig deeper. During the week, we have structure. But when the weekend arrives, a a lot of that structure disappears for women. And suddenly you're left alone with yourself, your thoughts, your emotions, your dreams, your potential, maybe your disappointments. And that was where things got uncomfortable for me, was on the weekends. Questions would start to come up first thing Saturday morning when I'd wake up. Am I happy? Am I living up to my potential? Am I settling? Am I growing? What do I actually want? This is exactly what psychologist Viktor Frankl described as the existential vacuum. It's a feeling of emptiness, aimlessness, a lack of meaning, an inner void. That overall feeling of lack of purpose shows up in different ways. You may scroll social media endlessly. You might open your refrigerator door every 30 minutes. You might crave plans every weekend or overbook yourself or always want to be in the company of someone else or simply drink alcohol because there's nothing else to do. But that whole time, you really just have an inability to feel connected to yourself in the stillness. So alcohol feels like the solution because it creates anticipation and stimulation and the feeling of escape and relief. It gives your brain a quick dopamine spike. For a few hours, things will feel different. Something's happening. There's excitement. There's stimulation. Alcohol appears as if it's solving your boredom, but it's not solving that deeper sense of unfulfillment because alcohol doesn't give you enough time to ask what that feeling is in fact trying to tell you. Instead, your focus is on how do you get rid of that feeling? And those are two completely different conversations. One leads to escape, the other leads to understanding. I used to call one of my friends almost every Saturday morning and be like, I feel this emptiness again. As cognizant as I was, I couldn't link that feeling of lack, the void. I didn't link that with drinking alcohol. But it is, in fact, alcohol that is postponing your ability to be able to get in touch with yourself. Because what happens is you drink, and then the next morning you wake up, you, your same life is waiting, those same questions, that same potential you never tapped into, that same dissatisfaction. Only now in the morning you have less energy, less clarity, less motivation. So alcohol keeps you in that cycle until your structure reappears. And now your busyness throughout the week keeps you in that state of avoidance. And you believe alcohol is the relief for that. Instead of creating, connecting, exploring, growing, or building a meaningful life, drinking becomes the event that makes up your life. How many nights was alcohol the only thing making the evening feel different? Alcohol artificially stimulates your brain's reward system, and you become accustomed to that repeated stimulation. So the absence of it feels like boredom because ordinary experiences now feel emotionally flat. It's not until you remove alcohol altogether that you learn how to experience pleasure and satisfaction without artificial stimulation. You know what it feels like to be at peace. You can appreciate a quiet evening or resting or being alone. You realize that stillness and boredom are not the same thing. An empty evening isn't something that needs to be filled. It's a possibility because boredom usually shows up right before growth. It's the space between who you've been and who you're becoming. That stillness is what helps you feel more connected, and it puts you in touch with your inner self and all of those questions you've been avoiding. Rather than feeling restless or agitated or disconnected, you start exploring. You start discovering new parts of yourself. You start creating. You reach new emotional depths. You figure out how to organize a life around who you truly are, what you actually want, and where you're going, rather than around drinking and recovering. The more you invest in your life, the more meaningful your life becomes. And a meaningful life is a fulfilling life. While you may still have moments here and there, you learn to better listen to your body and your mind when you're alcohol free. Maybe you do need a walk. Maybe you do need a rest. Maybe you do need connection. Maybe you do need solitude. Maybe you do need to get more in touch or more clear on your next goal. But whatever it is, you no longer interpret the absence of things to do or places to go as boredom. So you stop reaching for alcohol because the answers are not at the bottom of a glass. Alcohol doesn't solve that disconnection. And once you stop running from what feels like discomfort initially, you will realize that you're not bored at all. You're ready to grow. So, for your reflection, ask yourself, if alcohol were no longer available to distract you, what parts of your life would be asking for deeper attention, meaning, and fulfillment? As always, thank you so much for listening. Have you followed the show yet? If not, what are you waiting for? I will talk to you all next Wednesday.